Well, my subject tonight is Masters of Command. As you know, I will be speaking about three of the most famous generals of antiquity: Alexander the Great from the 4th century BC, Hannibal from the 3rd century, and Julius Caesar from the middle of the 1st century BC. But if I had a subtitle for the talk, it would be something like Heroic Leadership and Its Discontents. I want to talk about these three great leaders from antiquity, but I also would like to raise the question of why we're interested in them and why we're interested in heroic leadership more generally. My thesis is that we both love heroic leadership and we fear it. That we are passionately interested in geniuses and talented people who stand out from the crowd, people who seem to be able to bring us to a new level and to cut through obstacles and achieve new goals. And yet at the same time, we fear what these people may do if left unrestrained. So I'll be, in tonight's talk, in addition to talking about these ancient figures, from time to time I will be bringing up modern analogies, which I hope you will permit me. I assure you they're none too controversial. But I hope that they will be reminders that the people from the ancient world, in addition to their many other fascinations, are good to think with. Branding, very important if you want to be a conqueror, to give people a simple message of who you are. Here's Napoleon saying to the French that he crossed the Alps just like Hannibal and Charlemagne to conquer Italy. And you can see in this painting just what a dynamic symbol he is. Alexander on these coins that we saw before, he is young, and his hair is swept back to illustrate motion. He's in classical profile, he's handsome, and he's got these ram's horns, which are a sign that he is the son of Zeus. And he represented himself increasingly to people as a divine figure, because only someone who is the son of Zeus could possibly have conquered as much as he had. The ancient generals in the end failed. Alexander changed the world but did not create a new empire. Hannibal did not defeat the Romans. He lost the Punic War, and although he went back to Carthage and had a wonderful second career as an administrator in Carthage, so much so that the Romans chased him out of Carthage because he was bringing the country back too quickly. Hannibal ends up in the east, a bitter old man, advising eastern enemies of the Romans, but in the end being cornered by the Romans who want to arrest him and bring him to Rome and parade him in a triumph. He commits suicide to cheat the Romans of this last victory. He lives to a ripe old age, but he has known many, many failures. And Caesar, when he comes back to Rome, he forgets his political skills. He forgets his ability to compromise and to charm. He thinks of himself only as the man who is the effective king of the Roman world, and forgets that the one thing you don't want to do to the proud members of the Roman Senate is humiliate them. And they took their revenge on the Ides of March. So what's the takeaway? If you want to be a successful leader, you need not only the ambition and the judgment and the audacity and the other qualities of these great commanders I've spoken to you about. You need the wisdom of Socrates. You need the vision of Martin Luther King. And you need the humility of George Washington, who, as King George of England was said to have said about him, if he doesn't want to be king, he must be the greatest man in the world. Thank you.
Even if Shakespeare didn't exist, and even if the other problems I mentioned weren't problems we had to contend with, the simple reality of the event would pose a grave dilemma. Caesar was not assassinated in a public place in front of an enormous crowd of Romans. He was assassinated at a meeting of the Roman Senate. And here is the Roman Senate House in front of probably 200 to 300 people. It all happened very quickly. The assassins surrounded him. They formed a security perimeter while this was happening. Many of the senators were busy looking out the windows, gossiping with their friends, dozing off before they knew it was over. And then they went running out of the Senate House, terrified, wondering if they were going to be next. What did this all portend? Nobody was there with a smartphone videotaping the scene. And from the word go, there was a debate, a controversy over precisely what had happened. Who had done it? How had they killed Caesar? Did he fight back? And everyone was telling a different story. So the first one is a man named Nicholas of Damascus, perhaps the greatest ancient author who I'll bet that most of us have never heard of. Nicholas was a Greek speaker who came from Damascus, Syria. He studied Aristotle and Thucydides when he was young. He was a serious student of philosophy and history and wrote philosophy and history. And the reason he's important for our purposes is he wrote a book called The Life of Augustus, the life of the Emperor Augustus. Most of it is lost. Only a small portion of it survives. In fact, technically none of it survives. All we have is a summary of it, a Reader's Digest version that comes from a later period. Luckily for us, it focuses on the youth of the Emperor Augustus and the assassination of Julius Caesar and the aftermath of the assassination. Now, as I said, Nicholas was a very serious student of philosophy and history, and he approaches it in a rather impressive manner. He gives us an antidote to the version we get in Shakespeare, which is, it shows an assassination led by a very idealistic Brutus. Nicholas gives us a very uber-realistic, a very skeptical account of the assassins and what they were doing, and he makes this a struggle over power, over political power, not over right and wrong. He makes Caesar something of an innocent victim. So let me sum up. What can we get from the ancient sources? How trustworthy are the ancient sources for Caesar's assassination, for the dictator Gaius Julius Caesar in this Renaissance statue? They don't give us the degree of certainty that they would like. They are, in a way, an opening, an invitation to study the classics, an invitation to go back and to read them on our own and to sift them, to weigh them, to use the skills that a classical education can give us. Skills that not only teach us how to read texts, but skills that force us to ask questions about justice, about statesmanship, about morality, and about greatness. The sources, from the point of view of just the facts, are not trustworthy at all. But because the sources, the ancient sources, force us to walk with the greats, they are trustworthy indeed. Thank you.